The day my husband was diagnosed, I was standing in the cereal aisle at Kroger. He called me himself. His voice was steady, the way Marcus always was steady when the car broke down on the highway. Steady when we lost the baby the first time. Steady in a way that used to make me feel safe, and sometimes, if I'm honest, made me feel alone. He said the words clearly. Stage 3, colorectal. They caught it late, but not too late. Those were the exact words. Not too late. I left my cart in the aisle. I didn't even put the milk back. I just walked out. We were 31 and 33. We had a 3-year-old daughter named Rosie. We had a mortgage we were barely managing, 2 car payments, and a joint savings account that had $4,200 in it. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, who was already asleep because rest is important, the body needs rest, I stared at the ceiling for 4 hours and did the math over and over. His treatment plan came out to somewhere between $67,000 and $90,000 out of pocket after insurance. That was the number the financial counselor at the oncology center gave me, sliding a worksheet across a laminate desk like she was discussing a car loan. She had a bowl of mints on her desk. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to have next to a worksheet about whether or not your husband gets to live. I want you to understand what our life looked like then, so you know exactly what I was dealing with. Marcus was a contractor, good at his job, reliable, never out of work, but contract work doesn't come with great insurance. And the policy we had was technically compliant but practically useless for something like this. My job as a registered nurse covered Rosie and me on a decent plan, but Marcus was on his own. We had tried to get him on mine the previous year and been told the window had closed. We kept meaning to fix that. We kept putting it off the way you put off things when you're young enough to believe there's time. My parents lived 40 minutes away from us. My mother taught elementary school for 27 years before she retired. My father managed a regional distribution company and retired at 62 with a pension and a 401k and a lake house in Tennessee they bought for cash. I grew up knowing we were comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. And I was raised to understand that family takes care of family, that money is just a tool, that love shows up in action. I believed that completely. I believed it the way you believe in something you've never had reason to question. My sister Diane is 4 years younger than me. She's always been the one my parents worried about less, which I used to think meant they trusted her more, but I've since come to understand means something different. Diane is beautiful in a loud, obvious way that I've never been, and she has always known how to make my parents feel like being around her is a gift. She got engaged in February of that year, 3 months before Marcus's diagnosis, to a man named Todd, who sells commercial real estate and has very straight teeth. The wedding was set for October. Destination: Tuscany, Italy. My parents had already paid a significant portion of the wedding costs. The venue deposit alone was $18,000. My mother had been talking about this wedding for 6 months by the time Marcus got sick. She had a whole folder on her phone with venue photos, floral arrangements, a spreadsheet of the guest list. She showed it to me once at Sunday dinner, and I smiled and said everything looked beautiful, and I meant it. I called my mother the week after Marcus's diagnosis. I told her everything. She cried on the phone. She said she was so sorry. She said Marcus was a fighter and they would pray for him and that she loved us so much. I felt better after that call. I thought, okay, we have people. We are not in this alone. 2 weeks later, I sat down and actually looked at the numbers. Treatment was scheduled to start in 6 weeks. We had to make a significant payment before the first infusion. Insurance required pre-authorization, which was going to take time. Marcus couldn't work at full capacity while undergoing chemo. My income alone covered the mortgage and the basics, but not the medical bills. Not even close. I made a spreadsheet. I am a nurse. I am organized. I sat at the kitchen table after Rosie was in bed and looked at every option I could pull from our retirement accounts. Early penalty plus taxes would eat roughly 30%. I could look at medical loans with interest rates around 14%, and that was if we qualified. Or I could ask my parents for help. A loan, not a gift. A loan with whatever terms they wanted, paid back on a schedule, in writing if they needed it that way. My father answered when I called. I laid it out the way I'd lay out a care plan. Calm, specific, organized. I told him the number we needed to cover the first phase of treatment. I told him we had a plan for paying it back. I told him Marcus was optimistic. The oncologist was good, and we just needed a bridge. Just something to get us through the first few months while we figured out the longer-term financing. My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Claire, we have a lot of money tied up in Diane's wedding right now." I thought I had misheard him. I said, "Dad." He said, "I'm not saying no, I'm just saying the timing is really difficult. We have vendors we've already paid, and the Tuscany trip your mother and I are also covering for a few of the extended family members. It's already a significant outlay." I sat there at my kitchen table with my spreadsheet open in front of me and listened to my father explain the logistics of a destination wedding in Italy while my husband's cancer treatment was scheduled to begin in 5 weeks. I said very quietly, "Dad, Marcus is sick." He said, "I know that, sweetheart, and we're going to help however we can, but we need to talk to your mother and look at what we have available. This isn't something I can decide right now." I said, "Okay." I said I understood. I hung up, and I sat there for a long time. My mother called 3 days later. She said they'd talked it over, and they wanted to help. They really did, but October was so close, and the wedding costs were still coming in, and they had to be careful. She said maybe you could talk to a hospital financial counselor or look into a payment plan. I said, "Mom, I work in a hospital. I know what payment plans look like. I know what happens when people can't keep up with them." She said, "I know you're scared. We're scared too." I said, "Are you coming? When treatment starts, can you come stay with Rosie so I can be with Marcus?" She hesitated. She actually hesitated. She said, "Claire, we're going to be in Italy for most of October, and the lead up is so hectic right now." I stopped listening somewhere around that point. I heard words, but I stopped processing them. That was the moment. Not a single explosion. Just a door closing very quietly. So quietly you almost don't notice until you're standing on the wrong side of it and the lock has clicked and the house is dark. My sister called me a week before she left for Italy. She said she'd heard I was stressed about money stuff. That was exactly how she said it. Money stuff. And she wanted me to know she was thinking of me. She said she wished the timing were better. She said Todd's family was covering a lot of the wedding expenses, so it's not like it's all on Mom and Dad. She said she hoped Marcus felt better soon. I said, "Diane, I need to know something. Did you know that Mom and Dad have the money? That they have it available and they're choosing not to lend it to us?" She was quiet. Then she said, "Claire, don't make my wedding about this." I hung up. What happened next? I have told only a few people. I don't say this for sympathy. I say it because I want you to understand what a person actually looks like when they are alone. I went back to work on shifts I wasn't scheduled for. I picked up every extra hour I could. I called Marcus's parents, who are good people with very little, and they sent us $3,000 from their savings without being asked twice, which is more than I can say for people with lake houses. I applied for every financial assistance program the hospital had. I contacted the pharmaceutical company that made Marcus's primary medication and got on a patient assistance program that reduced one part of the cost significantly. I put the initial treatment payment on 2 credit cards and a medical financing account, and I did not sleep more than 4 hours on any night in October. Marcus went through his first round of chemo while my parents were in Tuscany. I have a photo from that day on my phone that I have never deleted. He's in the infusion chair with a blue hospital blanket on his lap, giving a thumbs up, and Rosie is sitting next to him eating animal crackers. I am behind the camera trying to look like everything is fine. My mother sent me a photo of the Tuscan hillside that same week. She said the venue was even more beautiful in person. She said she wished I could see it and put a heart emoji at the end. I did not respond. When they came home, my mother called and said they needed to talk. She came over on a Sunday afternoon and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had made the spreadsheet. And she said she was sorry the timing had been so hard, and that she and my father wanted to help now that things had settled down. They were prepared to offer us $15,000. Marcus was halfway through his second treatment cycle. We had already accumulated $41,000 in medical debt by that point, spread across credit accounts and a personal loan at 11% interest. I said, "That's not what we needed, and you know it, we needed it 4 months ago." She said, "We did the best we could." I said, "No, you did what was convenient." She started to cry. She said I was being hurtful. She said everything she'd done for me over the years, all the sacrifices. I sat across from her and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, something that was entirely empty, like a room after the furniture has been taken out. I said, "I think you should go." I didn't call my father. I didn't call Diane. I changed my contact preferences on my phone so that calls from their numbers went straight to voicemail. I didn't do it dramatically. I didn't write anyone a letter or send a final message. I just stopped the way you stop doing something that was never actually working. Rosie was 4 by then. She asked about Grandma and Grandpa a few times in the beginning. I said they were busy. After a while, she stopped asking. Marcus finished treatment 14 months after it started. The oncologist used the word remarkable at the follow-up appointment, and I went to the hospital parking garage and sat in my car and cried for 45 minutes. Not because I was sad, just because I had been holding something very heavy for a very long time, and my hands finally briefly let go. We spent 3 years paying off the debt every extra shift, every tax return, every birthday check from Marcus's parents. We sold one of the cars. We took no vacations. Rosie's 4th birthday party was in our backyard with a store-bought cake and 6 kids from her preschool. And it was genuinely one of the best days of my life. I am telling you all of this because I want you to understand that I was fine. We were fine. We rebuilt. We figured out slowly and painfully that we didn't need them. That the family we'd made, Marcus, Rosie, me, was enough. That the people who show up in the dark are the ones who matter. Everyone else is just background. I had not spoken to my mother in 4 years. I had not spoken to my father in 4 years. I had not spoken to Diane in 4 years. Then, on a Tuesday morning in November, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my father. He said, "Claire, your mother passed away on Sunday." I sat down on the floor of my hallway, not because I was devastated. I want to be honest with you. I don't know what I was. It was more like the floor came up to meet me, like my body decided it needed to be closer to the ground for a moment. I said, "What happened?" He said it was her heart. She'd had a procedure 2 years ago that none of them had told me about. She'd been managing it, and then on Saturday night she had an episode, and by Sunday morning, she was gone. I said, "Why didn't anyone tell me she was sick?" He said, "We didn't want to bother you. I'm going to let you sit with that for a second. They didn't want to bother me." I went to the funeral. I put on a black dress and drove 40 minutes. I sat in the 3rd row and watched them bury my mother, holding my own hand because Marcus stayed home with Rosie, and I didn't want to put a 7-year-old through a funeral. Diane sat in the front row with Todd and their 2 children. She did not look at me. My father looked at me once from across the cemetery and nodded. I nodded back. That was the entirety of our interaction that day. 3 weeks after the funeral, I got a certified letter from an estate attorney. It informed me that I was listed in my parents' estate documents and that a meeting had been scheduled to discuss the distribution of assets. I went. My father was there. Diane was there with Todd. The attorney opened a folder. My parents' estate was worth approximately $1,400,000, the lake house, the investments, the retirement accounts that had rolled over considerably more than I had understood them to have. The attorney read the document. My mother had updated her will 8 months before she died. In the updated version, the estate was split 60% to Diane, 40% to me. In a previous version, it had been equal. The change had been made without telling either of us. Diane looked at the table. My father looked at his hands. I looked at the number on the page. $67,000. That's what we had spent on Marcus's treatment, all in, by the time we finished paying it off. More than 4 years of debt, more than 4 years of extra shifts, cut vacations, and a birthday party with a store-bought cake. Money that my parents had available, had sitting in investment accounts while they paid for a destination wedding in Tuscany and sent me a heart emoji. $1,400,000. After the meeting, Diane caught up to me. She said, "I know this is a weird situation. Todd and I have talked and we think the right thing to do is honor Mom's wishes. We really do love you, Claire." I said, "Diane, your daughter has Rosie's eyes." I don't know why I said that. It just came out. It was the truest thing I could think of. Our kids look alike. They're cousins. They have never met. Diane looked at me for a long moment and then nodded, walking back to her car. I sat in my car in that parking lot for a long time. I thought about the cereal aisle at Kroger. I thought about the infusion chair and the blue blanket and Rosie eating animal crackers. I thought about the spreadsheet on my kitchen table and the phone call with my father and the Tuscan hillside photo with the heart emoji. I want to be careful here. I don't want to tell you I was angry, because anger feels too clean for what I was feeling. It was more like recognition, the way you recognize something you've always known but haven't let yourself say out loud. They had the money the entire time. Not that they didn't have it. Not that it was complicated or that the timing was impossible. They had the money and they made a choice. And the choice was the wedding, the hillside, and the ease of not disrupting anything. And I had made a different choice. I had chosen to show up every day to a situation that was unfair, exhausting, and terrifying. I had kept going. I had paid every dollar back to myself, to the credit cards, to the loan company. I had done it without a lake house, or a 401 kek, or a single cent from the people who were supposed to be my family. The question I keep getting asked by the few people I've told is, what did you do? Here is what I did. I accepted the 40%. I want to be honest about that. I thought about refusing. I thought about it seriously. The idea of standing on principle, saying, I don't want anything from people who chose a vacation over my husband's life. There's something clean about that, something that feels like high ground. But then I thought about Rosie. I thought about the debt we'd finished paying 18 months earlier. I thought about what $560,000 could mean. College without loans, a real savings account, the ability to breathe. I thought about what Marcus had gone through, what Rosie deserved, and what I had already given up. And I realized that refusing the money wasn't principled. It was just another way of punishing myself for what they did. So I took it. I sat with the attorney and signed the paperwork. I accepted my 40% and did not feel guilty for a single moment. I took $20,000 and set it aside for Rosie's education account, which now has more in it than it's ever had. I paid off our mortgage 18 years ahead of schedule. I put the rest somewhere safe, and am not in a hurry about it. My father and I have had 2 phone calls since the estate settled. They were polite and brief, the way you'd talk to someone you used to know. He is 71, lives alone in the lake house, and I think he is probably lonely. That is a consequence, not a punishment. I didn't engineer it. I just stopped pretending. Diane sent me a text message 2 months after everything finalized. It said, I know things aren't great between us. I want to try for the kids, if nothing else. I have not responded yet. I'm not sure if I will. I've been thinking about what trying actually looks like, what it would require from me, whether I have anything left over for people who have already shown me exactly who they are when things get hard. What I know is this. I know what it costs to be the person who stays. I know what it looks like to sit in an infusion chair with a blue blanket and give a thumbs up for a photo because your kid is watching and you need her to believe that things will be okay. I know what it sounds like to be told the timing is difficult, while your timing is the worst it has ever been. I know what my husband's voice sounded like in the cereal aisle at Kroger, steady, not too late. I know what I'm worth now, which is something I couldn't have told you the day I sat on the floor of my hallway with the phone in my hand. I know who showed up. Marcus's parents, with their $3,000, their love, and their complete absence of hesitation. My coworker, Janet, who watched Rosie 11 times during treatment without ever making me feel like I owed her. My neighbor Carol, who left food on our porch without knocking because she understood that sometimes what you need is for someone to give you something without making you perform gratitude for it. Those are my people. They will always be my people. Everything else is just paperwork. If you are in the middle of something like this right now, sitting at a kitchen table with a spreadsheet and a phone, and the slowly settling knowledge that the people you counted on are not going to come, I want you to hear me when I say that you will survive it. Not because it isn't devastating. It is. It will hollow you out in ways you don't fully understand until years later, when you're standing in a parking lot outside an estate attorney's office, and you finally let yourself see the whole shape of what happened. But you will survive it. And on the other side, you will know something that most people spend their whole lives guessing at. You will know exactly who loves you. And you will know that it's worth showing up for them every day. If this story resonates, comment, like, and subscribe to share and support others who might need to hear this.